You are Locked On Kentucky, your daily podcast on the Kentucky Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, what's going on, Big Blue Nation? Welcome on into Locked On Kentucky, your daily Kentucky Wildcats podcast. I'm your host, Lance Dawe, and on today's episode of Locked On Kentucky, we are going to give you Kentucky basketball's 5 most important players for the upcoming season. Obviously, this is one of the most balanced teams, not just in the SEC, but in the entire country. But who are some of the most important, most crucial additions across this rotation? I'm going to give you my top 5 today. Thank you so much for making Locked On Kentucky your first listen every single day. Want to remind everyone out there that we are free and available on all platforms. And if you are watching on YouTube, I would greatly appreciate it if you subscribe to the show. And if you are listening on podcast, I would also appreciate it if you subscribed there as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more, and as we kind of wade deeper into the summer here, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right, there's something for everyone every day all summer long, so visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. My top 5 most important Kentucky basketball players. Now, I have them ranked here, and I would strongly encourage you guys, if you're listening along, whether that be on YouTube or on the podcast feed, thank you so much for tuning in. Give me your top 5 players on this roster. I know it's going to probably vary for essentially every single fan, and I understand I understand why, like I said at the beginning of the show, this is one of the most balanced rotations in the entire country. It will end up being so. You've got a very deep bench. You've got a 1A and a 1A and a 1B at every single position. But give me your top 5. Whether you're listening on YouTube or on podcast, at Locked On UK on Twitter is where you can find me if you want to share that top 5, or if you just want to leave it in the comments below, you can absolutely do that as well. At the top here, I've talked about this guy a lot recently on the show, and I think that there's no reason to stray away from the hype that I'm trying to build around him. Obviously, it doesn't need to be built by me. He's a very, very good player, and that is Jaxson Robinson. I think he's going to end up being the most important player for Kentucky basketball this season for a variety of reasons. First of all, I think it's the scoring. Last year at BYU, he led the Cougars in points per game despite coming off of the bench and only playing 26.5 minutes per contest, 14.2 points while shooting 53% inside the arc, 35.5 outside, 2.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists, shade under a steal per game, half a block. Pretty solid statistics here. And when you go and watch his game, he is a pure scorer. That's what they brought him out on the floor to do, and I believe that's what he's going to do for Kentucky. Now, in a system with, I believe, a more tailor-made personnel grouping, I guess is the way you could say it here, for this Mark Pope offense, you may see Jaxson Robinson start to branch his game out into other areas. Maybe he becomes a better rebounder. I think that his assist per game is probably going to be the highest it's ever been in his career. The highest it was during his junior year with BYU, averaging 1.8 assists. I think he gets over 2 comfortably with the way that Pope wants to run this offense with this group of players. But the personnel, I think, from last year as opposed to this season, I think is going to be very important. The surroundings and then the change of scenery as far as competition and resources. I think that Robinson is going to be the best version of himself at Kentucky. You're going to see him score in bunches. I think you're going to see his three-point percentage go up. I think he's going to be more efficient. I think he's going to be more dynamic with the ball in his hands as well. I think that with the way that Kentucky has, again, structured this, he's going to be allowed to do more things beyond chuck a bunch of three-pointers. Last season, 6.9 of his 11.7 field goal attempts per game were from beyond the arc. I think that he's going to be able to dabble a little bit more in the mid-range. He's also going to be utilized as a cutter and a slasher to the rim because of how many different pieces that the Wildcats have on their roster that can kind of distribute and also be lethal from three-point range. If Kentucky statistically is what their different transfer portal additions were a season ago, which 7 or 8 of them very, very good from beyond the arc, you're going to see guys like Robinson and then a couple of other guys we're going to talk about here on this top 5. You're going to see them take a leap in efficiency, and you're going to see them look more competent. You're going to see them make more baskets. You're going to see them do more things on that end of the floor. I think Robinson is going to carry the load when it comes to scoring. And then I think, again, like I've said a couple of times, you're going to see him kind of develop in other spots as well that he's maybe not quite had the opportunity to shine in seasons prior. So Jaxson Robinson is my number 1 player, most important player on this team. The second player I want to get to here is, I think, just straight up the best defensive prospect that the Wildcats have on their team. I know a lot of people are going to say Lamont Butler, and we'll have things to say about him later on. But for my money, Amari Williams is Kentucky's best defensive player. Why do we think that? Well, 3-time Conference Defensive Player of the Year in the CAA during his time at Drexel. Last season, 12.2 points per game, 7.8 rebounds per contest, while averaging 2 assists per game, 0.8 steals, 1.8 blocks, shooting 52% from the floor, 33% from beyond the arc, even though I believe he only took 3 threes and went 1 of 3 from beyond the arc. Amari Williams is a very solid center, and when you look at his physical tools as well, 6'10", 6'11", depending on where you look, 245, 250 pounds. He is a defensive anchor, something that Kentucky lacked severely last year. If you want to take it back a year, actually, you may even see some better statistics during his junior season. 13.7 points per game, 8.8 rebounds, 2.2 blocks, 2.3 steals per game. The reason that he took a bit of a dip statistically is because of the fact that he played 5 less minutes in his senior season with the Dragons. 27.5 minutes per game in his junior year, 22.9 minutes in his senior season with Drexel. I think he's going to get somewhere between 27, 28, 26 minutes per game, and you're going to see him be a double-digit scorer. I think he's going to get close to double-digit rebounds for the Cats. He's going to get his blocks. I think he's going to be Kentucky's best rim protector. He has all of the tools and all of the physical traits to show out and be an extremely vital piece to this team. I think the Field of 68, if I'm not mistaken, I may be misquoting them, they made an interesting point recently. And I think this is something maybe we dive into as we get closer to the season. Kentucky has a well-balanced roster. Maybe one of the flaws here that we see is you have players that are really good at individual things, but you don't really have a well-adjusted all-around type of guy. You have really good defensive prospects. You have really good shooters. You have really good distributors. You have really good rebounders. You don't necessarily have one single player that sort of does a little bit of everything at a high level. I'm hoping that Jaxson Robinson is that guy. Amari Williams is one of Kentucky's best defensive players. I think he's the best. Does he have enough in his offensive game to be able to become one of Kentucky's most vital pieces? I think that's a question we need to ask, especially considering the fact that he's going to be surrounded with a bunch of shooters that are going to demand the ball as well. In my opinion, I think that there are 2 different ways to look at that. I think that, yes, he's going to be an offensive threat. I think that he can be a double-edged sword here, which is why I think he's going to end up being so valuable to the Wildcats and one of the most valuable centers in the SEC. He's going to be an offensive player. He's going to be respected on that end of the floor because of the spacing. I think that he's going to benefit from it. Same with Robinson, same with Butler, same with this entire team. I think they're going to benefit from the spacing. You could also look at it and say he's going to be hampered because of lack of touches or what have you. I think he's going to benefit from it. That's where I stand on it. So those are your top 2 players, in my opinion, top most important players for the Kentucky Wildcats. Let's continue along here. We'll talk about our next three in just a second. Before we do that, though, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is what keeps your ride or die alive. And eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you are into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every single time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's really easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home huge wins. You can keep your ride or die alive over at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. All right, continuing along here on the Monday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. Again, I really appreciate you guys checking out the show today. If you have not subscribed to the YouTube channel or the podcast feed, I would greatly appreciate it if you did so. Really appreciate everybody tuning into the channel. I know not a whole lot is going on in the Kentucky sphere, but we are making the most of it here at Locked On UK. If you have any questions about the team, please do me a favor and leave them in the YouTube comments below, or at Locked On UK on Twitter is where you can tag me in a tweet. You can DM me, ask me a question, and I will try my best to answer it on the show. Really excited, actually. We're getting closer and closer to college football season. Soon we're going to be able to do a home opener preview for the Kentucky Wildcats big time September slate for UK football coming up. Can Brock Vandagriff and company are they able to kind of survive what may end up being a very, very rough schedule? As far as we can tell, with things coming out of practice, I think the offense looks pretty good. I think it looks pretty sharp. The fact that Vandagriff has the arm and the ability to attack downfield with some of those speedy receivers that Kentucky has, I really do hope the philosophy that Kentucky goes with this year is, instead of playing at snail's pace, you're able to maybe start to play with just a little bit of tempo at times and run the ball extremely effectively with guys like Chip Trainum and I think an improved offensive line, in my opinion. And then whenever you are able to play off of that tempo by running the ball, hit some play action shots, do some things with Berrien Brown, Dane Key, what have you, the extremely loaded tight end room as well. Kentucky's going to have the ability. If they played faster, this would be a lethal unit, in my opinion. But they don't. And that's one guy's fault. Hopefully he's able to figure that out this season. He said as much this offseason that he wants to be able to play with a little bit more tempo. But anyway, I digress. We're talking about our top 5 Kentucky basketball players this upcoming season, the most important 5 here. Let's go for a guy that I think is underrated, undervalued, not talked about enough, at least on my show, I think. And then in various circles online, discussing Kentucky's most important players, discussing the highlighted guys. Andrew Carr, transfer from Wake Forest. I think it's going to be a crucial glue piece for the Wildcats. I'm going to start with the negatives here first, and then let's play into the positives. Is Ainsley Almanor good enough to play valuable minutes at the backup power forward position? Can he provide that? Or maybe a better question to ask, does Kentucky allow him to play valuable minutes at the backup 4? I am not entirely sure. I expect him to be good, but we don't know. We've not seen this team take the court. We don't know how they're going to look. If he's not the backup 4 that I currently have him tabbed or projected to be, Andrew Carr is going to have to do a lot of heavy lifting at power forward. Forget the statistics, forget the numbers, just talk about traits and talk about usage. Those two things alone Make him one of the most valuable players on this team if you don't like your depth at the 4, or if you can't rely on your depth at the 4, which again, I expect Kentucky to be able to, but it's a question we do have to ask. Because if we're looking up and down the 1-2, the starters in the bench, I would say point guard, shooting guard, small forward, and center, I would say that you like the guy coming off the bench more than you do Almanor, and that's not a shot at Almanor. He could end up being one of the most valuable players off of the bench for Kentucky because of his lethal shooting, and maybe that's his role. Maybe that's what he ends up being, as a 40-plus three-point shooter, and or 40% plus three-point shooter, and he's able to go out there and do some major damage whenever he comes and checks into the game. But as it stands right now, I think Carr's going to get a ton of minutes at the 4. He played a little bit of 5 during his time at Wake Forest. He's going to play exclusively power forward, I hope, here in Pope's system. It allows guys like Garrison and Williams to operate freely, get those guys minutes, keep them happy. 13.5 points per game, while shooting 53% from the floor, 37.1% from 3, almost 7 rebounds, 1.5 blocks, and 1.5 steals per game. The previous season, he shot 31% from 3. The year before that, he shot 40.5% from 3. And in his freshman season at Delaware, he shot 28.6%. So he's kind of been up or down and up and down and up. I'm hoping he doesn't take a down year in his final season of college basketball. But he's a career 34.4% shooter. He shot 37% last year. I think he's going to be around there when it comes to efficiency. I think he's going to be fine. I think he's going to be good, frankly. 37 for a 6'10" stretch forward is great. If you give him the minutes in a pace and space system, if you give him the minutes and the touches and the ability to go out there and just rock, just play, give him the time, he's going to produce. And it may not be the most jaw-dropping statistics that you see from Andrew Carr relative to the rest of this roster. It may be, who knows? But I think we're going to consistently say throughout the season, Andrew Carr is one of the most vital pieces to this team. One of the most important. He's going to be a double-digit scorer, I think. He's going to get 6 to 7 rebounds a game. If he's able to keep that three-point percentage up, going to be a great piece to have in transition, and I think maybe a little underrated on the defensive side of the floor, at least I hope. I hope that's the case. Andrew Carr, one of the most important players here. Let's go to Lamont Butler. Talked about him a lot recently. I said this when I talked about Butler, and I will reiterate it here again, and I kind of just said it about Carr. Forget about the statistics for just a second. Let's focus on traits. Tough shot maker. Really solid performer during the NCAA tournament in 2 different seasons. One of those years, he took the San Diego State Aztecs to the national championship with a buzzer-beating shot. This kid has been there before. He knows what it takes to win. He is one of the best defensive guards in all of college basketball, full stop. Forget about the statistics. Focus on the traits. Clutch, winner, defensive menace. He's going to bring a lot of great things to the table for Kentucky alongside leadership. He's proven to be a leader for the Wildcats. At least that's what we've been shown. That's what we've seen through clips and interviews and things like that. I hope that that's able to translate to real-time, big-time games here at the beginning of the season. I expect it to. Butler is better than his stats. Sometimes you just need to have a guy that's got that dog in him. 9.3 points. Shooting 42.1% from the floor, 30.2% from 3. Averaged 2.6 rebounds, 3 assists, 1.5 steals per game. Again, one of the best defensive guards in the country. Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year a season ago. Year before that, he shot 34.2% from beyond the arc. I think his numbers are going to go up And even if they go up by just a little bit, it's okay. If they go down by just a little bit, it's okay. You've got enough on this roster to kind of even things out. It's going to be fine. If they do end up going up, it's going to end up proving that he is more valuable to this team. Not only is he going to be great at defense, not only is he going to be a good leader, not only is he going to be a tough shot maker, but he's going to be efficient. He would end up being one of the most well-rounded pieces on Kentucky's roster at that point. Lamont Butler is my fourth player. Let's wrap up this list and let's talk about some of the guys that maybe, the guys that I left off this list that will also be able to contribute well to Kentucky this season. Before we dive into that, though, I do want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. I love sports, and I love them so much. I never want them to stop. I'm so excited that college football is coming up. But right now, we are kind of in a little bit of a dead period. The sports aren't sportsing quite like we want them to. We're getting close. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going anytime I want, whenever I'm in the mood. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets literally whenever I want. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. Every single day, there's something for everyone every day, all summer long. You need to head over to FanDuel.com and start making the most out of your summer. That is FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, wrapping up the Monday edition of Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe hanging out here with you. I appreciate you guys hanging out with me today. Had some really tough, frustrating internet connection issues as of late, but nevertheless, we push through. Sometimes your internet provider just simply does not give you internet just out of the blue, and sometimes you have to wait to publish episodes. I apologize for some of the delays here as of late. But we're wrapping up our top 5 Kentucky basketball players heading into the season, the most important 5 players on the Wildcats roster. So far, we've got Jaxson Robinson, Amari Williams, Andrew Carr, Lamont Butler, and then a guy that I think there's a lot of media talking about this kid as one of Kentucky basketball's potential stars. And I think that you can definitely see where he could blossom into a star for UK. And that's Otega Oweh. Transfer out of Oklahoma. Averaged under 5 points per game during his freshman season with the Sooners, and then 11 and a half points per game in his sophomore year, shooting 49.3% from the floor, 37.7% from 3, dramatically improved his three-point shooting percentage. Although he's not known as a three-point shooter, he doesn't, as far as volume goes, I should say. Only shot 64% from the charity stripe, but 3.8 rebounds, 1 assist, 1.5 steals, half a block. This kid is a really solid wing, 3-and-D type of player if you can get him, as far as the volume goes, to take more outside shots. 6'5", 210 pounds, up from Northeast. I believe he's from Jersey. This kid is tough. He is physical, hard-nosed basketball player. If he can knock down some outside shots, he's going to be able to give you a very well-rounded, solid piece. I know, again, we talked about the field of 68 saying earlier, Kentucky's got some good defensive players. They got some good offensive players. This is a guy that could develop into a well-rounded prospect. I really do think so. He's got to be able to get that free throw shooting percentage up, which through 2 seasons, it's hovering around 65%. You'd like to see that be able to get up a little bit. I think Oweh has the potential. He's got the ability to blossom into a more important player. He could end up ranking higher on this list than we currently have him, right? Towards the end of the season. Here's what gives me pause. When I watch Oweh play, and I watch the way that he operates on offense, and I think about the way that Kentucky is going to use their guys, the way that they're going to use guys on offense, the way they're going to use guys on defense. Unless Oweh keeps his efficiency with more volume, which is the big question, I don't know if he can do that. Unless he's able to do that, he's going to get caught in the midst of 3 or 4 other pieces on Kentucky's roster that are going to do similar things statistically. Now, obviously, every guy has different roles, and stats aren't everything at the end of the day. You're going to have to be able to actually see these guys and see what they do on the floor to see how they contribute, right? Because Kerr, Carissa, and Oweh could end up at the end of the season, say, averaging 11.5 points and shooting almost the exact same percentage and maybe averaging the same amount of assists, but you don't really think of them as the same players because, well, Carissa splits time at point guard. Oweh's more of a wing that gets a little bit more time there. Better defensively, possibly for Oweh as well. Carissa doesn't bring that much to the table on that end of the floor, but they have very similar statistics, right? I am asking, can you keep 37.7%? With your form, with your offensive game? Can you keep nearly 50% from the floor? Can you keep that efficiency with more volume? Because he's going to get more touches. 8.6 field goal attempts per game last year. Think he's going to get more this season. The scheme is going to call for it. The pace is going to call for it. This is something that I talked about a ton last year when breaking down Kentucky from a numbers perspective. Their tempo allows different things to happen in a game that, unlike a game that would be more average in terms of pace. On both ends of the floor, by the way. So if you speed up on offense, you're giving yourself more shots, right, than you would an average tempo team. But you're also giving the opposition more shots unless you create turnovers, which Kentucky didn't really do last season on defense. You have to, if you're somebody like Oweh, you have to be able to at least maintain some level of consistency with the added volume, with the change of scenery. And that's something that you could say about every single player on this list. Every single player on this team, sure. But with Oweh in particular, I see major boom or bust potential. And I'm leaning towards boom. And I really do think at the end of the day, this could be somebody that ranks second or third in terms of most important Kentucky players because of what he brings on the defensive end. That's not the question. It's the question of whether or not he can keep up with everybody else. And my expectation right now is that everybody benefits. Everybody benefits from this offense. So we have Robinson, we have Williams, we have Carr, we have Butler, we have Oweh. The players that did not make the list as most important players for Kentucky basketball. Kobe Brea was the guy that I debated between him and Oweh. I gave the nod to Oweh because of his defense. If Brea ends up being more of a volume shooter and he's able to shoot 47% from three or more, like just be insane like he was last season, he'll probably be second or first on the team in terms of importance, right? I just don't know if he's going to be able to get that volume because of how many other shooters are on this team. Kerr Carissa would have also been in strong consideration. Travis Perry, I think, is going to get more minutes than we currently expect, or at least the fan base currently expects. Ainsley Almanor, Brandon Garrison, I really, really, really hope that Garrison gets the minutes he's happy with this season and is able to come back next year because I think he's going to be awesome for Kentucky. I think he's really, really good. Colin Chandler, Trent Noah, those are also the guys that got kind of left off here. I'm curious to see what it takes for Chandler to kind of get up to speed. I'm curious to see how much he plays. Noah, I'm not sure he's going to play a ton this season. That's just where I'm sitting right now. But yeah, Carissa, Perry, Brea, Chandler, Noah, Almanor, and Garrison, those were the guys left off. If I had to give you a ranking for those guys, I would say Brea, then I would say Carissa, then I would say Garrison, Almanor, Perry. No. Swap Perry and Almanor. I think actually, no, you could just put them on the same tier. Chandler, and then Noah. That's where I would put it right now. But as you kind of work your way down, I think you feel like every player is kind of like on the same level, which is what we've been talking about for so long, that Kentucky's got a very, very, very balanced roster. So let me know what you think in the comments below. That's my list right there. All right, that's going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hey, you can follow the show on Twitter at Locked On UK. You can follow me on Twitter at LanceDawe_. You can follow the show over on Instagram. That is at Kentucky Podcast. Any questions, comments, concerns, leave those in the YouTube comments below. Hit me on the socials. I will see you all tomorrow for another episode of Locked On Kentucky. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and God bless.